Hello, this is Candy from eyes2jesus.blogspot.com, and this is my Tuesday. And lately I've been doing the brunt of my baking, mostly breads, on Tuesdays. So let's get started. I have a lot of bread I need to bake for this week. So I'm going to get started by making 2 loaves of banana bread. And then after that I'm going to make 1 loaf of white bread and then 2 loaves of whole wheat bread. So let's get started with those 2 loaves of banana bread. I will be using my beloved heavy-duty KitchenAid mixer. This is a 6-quart bowl. And inside this bowl I have 3 cups of white flour. To those 3 cups of white flour I'm going to add 1 cup of sugar. Then I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of baking soda and 2 teaspoons of sea salt. And then to that I'm going to add 2 omega-3 eggs. And I always like to give my hands a rinse after I crack eggs, so I'm going to do that. Alright, and then to that I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of real vanilla extract. That's my alarm reminding me to get something handled. I'll do that in a minute. And then to that I'm going to add 1 whole stick of soft butter. Now, in addition to that, I think I want to throw in maybe some oats, nuts, and flax seeds. So I'm going to see what I have. So let's put in a bit of oats, and I'm just going to do a bit of a handful of oats. And then I have some sliced or slivered almonds. So I'm going to do a couple handfuls of those, because remember this is going to make 2 loaves. And I'll put these back. And then I'm going to see if I have flax seeds, because flax seeds would be fabulous to add. That's a hard reach, and I'm 5'6". And I'm doing maybe the equivalent of 2.5 tablespoons of flax seeds, and these are whole flax seeds. I'm getting low on them. I'm going to need to buy some more. Alright, that should be good enough on the ingredients. So I'm going to get these going into my mixer, and I don't like my banana bread to be too wet. So after it's mixed together, I'm probably going to add more flour to thicken up the batter, and I just eyeball it. So I'm going to put in the bananas now, because obviously this is banana bread. And this is 6 ripe bananas mashed up with my masher here. Alright, let's get this mixed in my mixer. And again, I'm just going to add more flour if it looks like my batter is too wet. So I want a thick batter, almost a dough. Alright, so I did end up adding some more flour. I didn't really measure it. I just kept adding flour until the batter was a thick, sticky batter. The bananas were quite wet, and if my batter is too wet, then it seems to take forever for the banana bread to bake all the way through. So yeah, I like this. So I have a nice, thick, sticky batter, and I have here 2 buttered bread pans. I like to use the glass bread pans. So I am just going to divide this up between the bread pans somewhat evenly. And then I'm going to get this going in my oven. My oven is already preheated. And these are going to go in my oven at 350 degrees from anywhere to 45 minutes to an hour. Probably at around 40-45 minutes I will start checking them. And they'll probably end up being in there for about 50 minutes or so. So while the banana bread is baking in the oven, let's get started on making 1 loaf of white bread. I make bread differently than most people, but it comes out amazing. I'm going to show you how simple bread making can be. So 1 loaf of white bread. Inside my mixer bowl here, I just rinsed it out so I don't have banana flavoring in my white bread. So I rinsed out my KitchenAid mixer bowl and I put in 1½ cups of warm water. Not hot, not cold, just warm. Room temperature, a bit warmer than room temperature is fine. Alright, and then to that I'm going to put in some active dry yeast. And I'm just doing 1 teaspoon. Alright, and then to that, I'm going to just zhuzh in maybe about a tablespoon, half tablespoon of olive oil. And then about a half teaspoon of sea salt. And I'd say about a tablespoon or so worth of pure raw honey. Now I'm just going to rinse my hand. And then to that, let's add flour. So I'm going to start with putting in 3 cups of white flour. And now I'm going to get this going in my KitchenAid mixer. And I'm going to use the dough hook attachment. And I'm probably going to add a bit more flour as it mixes. I want it to become a sticky dough. So I could end up adding another ½ cup of flour or so. It really depends on a lot of things such as humidity. But I'm going to get my KitchenAid mixer mixing this. I will add a bit of flour if needed. I want it to not be a thick batter but a sticky dough. And you don't really need to knead this. You just need to combine it. So if you want to make this and you don't have a mixer, you can do this by hand with a spoon, and when it gets too hard to mix with the spoon, mix with your hands. You just need it combined into a sticky dough. There's no kneading required. And this time I didn't need to add any flour. Last week I needed to add some more flour. It seemed like almost a ½ cup's worth. But today I did not need to add any flour, neither did I have to the week before last week. So it's about a perfect measurement, but humidity and moisture in ingredients can vary. So it is a sticky dough. As you can see on my dough hook, it is still sticking to my dough hook. Alright? So I have my sticky dough here in my mixer bowl. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some olive oil, not flour, and I'm just going to drizzle a little bit on top and on the side. Now this is where it's going to get hands-on. I'm just rubbing the olive oil on top of the dough, and then I'm just starting to pick it up. It's going to want to stick to the bowl. But as I'm lifting it, the olive oil that I drizzled down the side is rolling under the dough. Now I am just rolling the dough, moving it around in the olive oil. So my lump of dough is no longer sticky because it is now coated in the olive oil for me to work with. I'm not going to knead it. I'm just going to form it into a gluten ball. To form a gluten ball, close it over your fist, fold it over your fist like so, remove your fist, and then just pinch the edges closed. This is a gluten ball. Now, ugly side is the side that we pinched closed, okay? So, ugly side up, we're going to put this into a buttered loaf pan, and then use knuckles. Use your knuckles and just push it down into the pan so to conform to the shape of the pan. And I'm just going to lift it and flip it over, pretty side up. Give it a few little pats. It's okay if you have some finger indentations in there. They will come right out on their own. And this bread is ready to rise. So I'm going to set this to the side, and this bread is going to rise for about 1 hour. So the banana bread's still baking in the oven. I got the white loaf of bread rising on the counter. Now we're going to get 2 loaves of whole wheat bread going, and this also is going to be very simple. So, I did not wash my mixer bowl this time. No need to. It's just got some residue from the white bread in there. I didn't even wash my kneading hook because that doesn't matter. We're just going to use this again. So, in my bowl, I put in 3 cups of warm water, because remember we're making 2 loaves of whole wheat bread. So 3 cups of warm water, and to that we're going to add 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast. To that we're going to add some olive oil. I'd say maybe the equivalent of a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half. Actually, I'm going to leave that loose there. And then let's add about a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of sea salt. And since we're making 2 loaves, we're going to want approximately 2 tablespoons or so of pure raw honey. Now I'm going to rinse my hand. And to that, we need to add the flour. So I need to get my wheat flour out. And let's start by putting in 6 cups of whole wheat flour. And again, if you're using a mixer, make sure it is a heavy-duty mixer so you don't burn out the motor. I am using a KitchenAid heavy-duty mixer. I'm using the big one that comes with a 6-quart bowl. I've had this thing for years. I can do 3 loaves of bread in here, no problem, but we're going to do 2 today. So that's cup number 4, cup number 5, and cup number 6. So I'm going to get this going in my mixer, add more flour if needed, and again, I don't want a batter, I want a dough, but I want it to be a sticky dough. And like with the white bread, I did not need to add any more flour. Today was a perfect mixture. So I just mixed it until it was a dough. No need to knead it unless you want to. But so if you're doing this by hand, just mix it together. You'll eventually need to switch to your hands because it'll get thick. Just mix it until it is a sticky dough. No kneading required. So, I'm going to take my olive oil. We're going to use oil, not flour, for this sticky dough. Drizzle some on top. Drizzle some down the sides. Of course, I have to do a bit more with this one because this is 2 loaves in here, not just 1. And again, I'm just spreading the oil around on the flour or on the dough. Moving it around to pick up that oil. And here we go. This is going to be 2 loaves. So I am now just squeezing it somewhat in the middle here to divide this into 2 pieces here of a somewhat equal portion. Alright, so I'm going to take my first lump, and again, not kneading it, just going to form it into a gluten ball over my fist. And you'll notice wheat dough will feel quite a bit different than white dough. White dough is kind of fun to play with. Wheat dough, it's a little bit boring, sometimes annoying. Alright, now I'm just closing off my gluten ball here at the end. Take a well-buttered loaf pan, ugly side up, pretty side down, and I'm just going to pop it in and push it in with my knuckles. And the wheat bread, after it bakes, tends to want to stick to the bread pan more than the banana breads and the white bread. So make sure you have this pans buttered very well, and that makes all the difference. Okay, flip it over, so pretty side up. Grab my next well-buttered loaf pan. Grab my second ball. And again, just going to form it into a gluten ball. So we're going to go over the fist and bring it down. Then pinch the ends together. Make sure they're pinched together well. You don't want any weird splits in your bread when it's rising or baking. Alright, ugly side up, pretty side down. It goes into your buttered loaf pan. And again, you're just using your knuckles to knuckle it down and get it into position. And fill up those corners here in the pan. And then you're just going to grab it, flip it over. Now it's pretty side up. And these two are going to rise for about an hour. So that was all pretty quick. The banana bread is still going to be in the oven for another 15 to 20 minutes. That gives you an idea of how fast getting those 3 loaves of bread was. So like I said, they're rising on the counter. I just put a paper towel over the top, and they're just going to rise on the counter for about an hour, and then I will get them baking. I will bake them at 375 degrees and for about a half hour. And that'll give a nice crispy crust on the outside, but nice fluffy bread on the inside. So we'll get to that. Meanwhile, it's getting to be lunchtime. I already have my stuff out for making bread, so I figured let's make some tuna melts for lunch. So let's start by making our homemade type of bread or pocket crust for our tuna melts. So, in my trusty KitchenAid mixer bowl, I have in a cup and a half of, you guessed it, warm water. And to that, I'm going to add a teaspoon of yeast. Even though this is going to have very little rise time, it will rise in the oven. And the yeast does seem to add some flavor. Alright, and then to that, let's do about a tablespoon-ish of pure raw honey. And again, rinse my hands. And then to that, let's do a little bit of olive oil. Maybe about half a tablespoon worth. And just grab my salt really quick. Let's do about a half a teaspoon of sea salt. And then we need 3 cups of white flour. So there is 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to pop this with the dough hook into my mixer, and I'm just going to have it mix until it's a sticky dough. It is mixed as a sticky white dough. So I'm going to take my olive oil, drizzle a bit on top of the sticky dough and a bit down the side. And then just spreading the olive oil on top of the dough. Now I'm starting to lift the dough so the olive oil can drip underneath to release it from the bowl. And now I'm just moving the dough around in the bowl. Voila. Okay, alright, so let's start by taking our ball and let's divide it in half. It's fairly equal-ish. I'm going to take this ball and divide it in half again. And then I'm going to take this ball and divide it in half one more time. So we got a little piece of dough here. Just going to roll it to a ball and flatten it out. And I just have an oiled, with olive oil, big cutting board here. Now I'm just going to spread the dough out on the board. That looks pretty good.
No.
I'm going to move that off to the side. Now I'm going to get my other little teeny tiny ball. And let's flatten that out. And you can use a rolling pin, but this dough, it is, remember, a sticky dough, but then it's made not sticky with the olive oil. It makes it very pliable and easy to work with. So that's 2. Now I'm taking my medium-sized ball now and dividing that into 2. So I have another 2 of the little balls here. Let's get that spread out. There we go. That'll be number 3. Another little tiny ball. Spread that out with my hands. Here's number 4. Now I'm going to take numbers 3 and 4 and I'm going to move them to a greased cookie pan here, a greased cookie sheet, so I can get more room. Okay. I'm going to take the second half of the lump. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's divide this in half. Let's make 2 big ones. So, this is going to be a bigger tuna melt, so this is going to spread out more. Like so. So that way this gives me 4 little ones and 2 big ones, because I do have a couple of big eaters in the family. A couple of growing teenage boys who are eating a lot. There we go. Now I am going to open up a couple cans of tuna fish. I'm going to spread some tuna fish onto this. And then I'm going to sprinkle on some mild cheddar cheese, put on some pickles, maybe some jalapenos, and then I'm going to fold them in half after I got the stuffing I want. I'm going to fold it in half, pinch it closed, maybe use a fork to give it a pretty design where I pinched it closed, and then these will be ready to go into the oven for lunch. So I added some tuna fish, some shredded mild cheddar cheese, and a couple of pickles to each one of these. Now what I'm doing is I'm just taking the dough, folding it over in half, and then I am pushing with my fingers to seal the dough as it's folded over in half. And then, to make it pretty and to further seal it, I'm taking my fork and I am just pressing it against the edges, which gives it a pretty cool look. Now, this is a very floppy, delicate dough, so you don't want to rush this. I'm going to use a spatula to help me, and I'm going to lift it off of my oiled board here and onto my buttered cookie sheet that I'm going to bake these on when the banana bread comes out of the oven. And the banana bread is almost ready. So there we go. So the 2 loaves of banana bread are fresh out of the oven. I'll be removing them from the pans shortly, but aren't they beautiful? So they baked at 350 degrees for 50 minutes, and they are passing the toothpick test, so they are out. Now I'm getting ready to put in our tuna melt lunch. So I got all 6 of them ready, and I poked 3 holes with my fork on the top of each one so that air can escape, so that we don't have anything scary happening in the oven or any weird bubbles. So I'm going to just keep the oven at 350 degrees, and I'm going to put those in probably for about 20 minutes, and then I'll check them and see if they need to go any longer. But I would say 15-20 minutes, and they'll probably be ready. And here are the 2 banana loaves, the banana bread loaves, out on the counter cooling, and they need to cool completely before slicing them. And meanwhile, lunch, the tuna melts are in the oven. And here are the breads that are rising. See, the white one's gone up there quite a bit. And here are the 2 wheat. They're going up there quite a bit too. So they need to be approximately double in bulk before they are risen enough. So double the size they were or more when they were dough, when I put them in. So yeah, these are cooling. Lunch is in the oven, and these are rising. And the tuna melts came out of the oven. I just let them sit for about 5 minutes to cool a bit. And they smell amazing, and they come right off the pan. You can see from the bottom there, they are not too well done. They seem to be just right. So I'm going to finish setting up lunch, and we're going to dig in. And I let the breads rise for about an hour and a half. You can see the white bread is overflowing the pan there. And the wheat breads are doing pretty good. I probably should have made them a little bit more bigger, maybe made a little bit more dough. But they're going to be cute. There's going to be 2 smaller loaves of wheat bread and 1 big loaf of white bread. So yeah, I let them go for about an hour and a half rise time. And the oven is preheating to 375 degrees. And once it's ready, these 3 beauties will be going in for about a half hour. And I just took the 3 loaves of bread out of the oven. So they are sitting out and cooling. So there's the white loaf. And here are the 2 wheat loaves. So there they are. So they all 3 need to cool completely before I slice them. And yeah, they all turned out really nicely. And then meanwhile, I'm going to slice and store the banana bread. So that's the breads that I made on my baking day today. Have a blessed day.